Everybody, welcome to the Lore in the Past, also known as Lore in the Morn, where I come and talk to everybody who can't make it to the nightly shows, and of course talking to everybody across the pond. I hope you all are doing really well today. As I probably said, I am Lore Reloaded, your host. Hey, if you're watching this video on demand, you know how this works. At first, I let you know how you can get a hold of me or talk to me. If you ever have any questions, you can message me at facebook.com/Lore Reloaded, or we can chat about almost anything at twitter.com/Lore Reloaded. I do enjoy talking about stuff like lore, StarCraft, Star Trek, Star Wars, things like that, but I also give some of my other opinions talking about news of the day. So if you're not interested in that, you may not want to do that. Of course, you can always support the channel and ensure I continue to do this by going to patreon.com/Lore Reloaded, becoming a sponsor by hitting that green fund button, or doing super chats. Now, let's see all who's coming in for today. We got 14 Kalium in the house. The Kaylas, if you notice, the Kaylas is in green, and he has a cool little icon because he is one of this show's YouTube sponsors. Welcome today, sir. Lore Reloaded, are you having a crampy computer day with computer glitches? No. Jordan Sullivan at Lore Reloaded. Hey, buddy. Hey to you. There we go. I finally got it loaded. Hello, Lore Reloaded, a.k.a. James, says Dustin Pearson. What's going on? What's the Creek? Don't know what that is. Park, Maxwell, Howard Gleason, Adris Ahmed, all you fun people in the house. Today, I know I said Star Trek is conservative or whatever. Honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to talk about today. I sincerely did not. So I figured, hey, why don't we just talk about whatever you guys want to talk about? Because Trek is quite obviously not conservative. The one thing that did spike my interest was I was noticing that in the Drumhead, a lot of people are calling that clip, like Picard taking out SJWs or something like that, silly. I was thinking about doing a Drumhead video or episode just discussing that entire breakdown of what went on and the different points of view from it. I don't think that it's necessarily even a conservative versus liberal or anything like that. Got Luke Bednall saying, yeah, communism is not conservative. Fair enough. Why doesn't Starfleet use Klingon cloaking devices? Because they agreed with the Romulans at the Treaty of Algernon that they would not. That is exactly why. So, we can talk about the politics of Star Trek, of the Borg, or the Federation, or whatever you guys really want to get into. I'm kind of leaving this a little bit open, so we're going to see how that is going. Professor Janus, you aren't allowed to go. You got to refresh and come back and stay. You're not allowed to leave. Or we can talk about whatever you want, and I'll just change the title. We'll see how this goes. I'm not completely convinced that this is going to be a successful stream. Valkyries 1, hello. Well, hello to you as well. For the most part, at best, the problem looking at politics and applying it to something like Starfleet or the Federation is that politics generally aren't black and white. So people have a lot of issues trying to name something. So if I was to call it communist, people would say, well, it's not communist because that's not my definition of communism. If I was to call it socialist, well, it's not socialist because that's not my definition of socialism. I mean, there are some hard and fast rules to it, but there is some gray to it as well. For instance, I don't think that the United States lives in a purely capitalistic nature, right? I think it's a mixed bag. Nate Watson up in the house giving a $5 super chat. One of the ways that it supports the channel and keeps me doing this full time so that I can support you guys is through super chats. Nate Watson, can we talk about the in-universe issues with genetically engineered people? Well, I mean, if that's what you guys want to go with, we definitely can. We can discuss that. 14K Leom, did you see the inner space clip with the Empress being recruited in Section 31? And we now know what the black badges means. 14K Leom, I actually addressed this in a geek breakdown where I specifically put in the title. We're talking about that. It doesn't prove anything necessarily because deleted scenes aren't necessarily canon. And there are good and bad things about it. If you guys want to, First, I'm going to go off screen for just a second. Or am I? I am not. Never mind. We can talk about genetically engineered characters if you want to. I think it depends on how far you're willing to go and what you're willing to do, right? And I know that creates a slippery slope, but let me give you an example. For instance, I would say that genetic engineering to remove most, what's the word I'm looking for? Most genetic defects. So that when someone is born, they're born naturally healthy, or as healthy as they can be, I'd be okay with that. I wouldn't have any issues, and I think that the in-universe Trek in Starfleet, they even say that genetic mutation past a certain point is what is not allowed, is what is against the fold, not necessarily making someone healthy. But then, to make superhumans, so to make your Khans, your Bashirs, and other such mutations, does somewhat get into a dreary and a dark place. And not just because of the writing or the plot. I mean, it's written so that obviously Khan is the bad guy, right? It's written to make it look bad, to genetically mutate people. And to really go against the stem for there. Because I think the problem with genetically enhancing humans, at least, is that unless you can breed out our negative points, you are going to have a Khan. Someone who is like Khan, who does what Khan does. And I think because of that, it should be outlawed. Now, that's my opinion. I'd be interested in what you guys think. We can go into the Cardassians, depending. At Lore Reloaded, how did the Klingon fleet fare so badly after the Dominion War? It should have been churning out new ships like the Federation, but they fell well behind in techs and ships after that. I would say that they just didn't have the infrastructure for it. I would say that they were becoming more and more reliant on the Federation. By the Dominion War, I would say that they're over... Well, that's not even a word. The requirement for Federation resources put them in a place that during the Federation-Klingon War, they lost a lot of their infrastructure, and then once the Federation and Klingons became allies again, they had to rebuild that, which is why their fleet wasn't up to snuff from a numbers perspective. Bashir is a jerk. Spoilers. It was Johnny Doe. It was an episode back in The Next Generation where the crew stumbled on this old colony that practiced genetic modification. It was actually ironic considering that Geordi had saved the colony. Yeah, I remember vaguely that episode. I'd have to rewatch it to really speak on it. I mean, people have brought that up, and I vaguely remember that. At Lore Reloaded, who is your least favorite Star Trek character and why? Well, Wesley Crusher isn't actually a Star Trek character, so I wouldn't say him. Neelix, I would say, probably because he's poorly written. They have a his character was so poorly portrayed, and he was supposed to be the breakout character, that I really don't like him. He grates me. He grates me as much as he grated Tuvok in the early years. Howard Gleason is right. I do love Wesley Crusher. In fact, that is the only person I would leave my family for, is to be with Will Wheaton. But he's not considered in canon by CBS, so we can't talk about him. That's a true fact. Laura, I saw a video about a parent who wants their child to blind. Doesn't make any sense, Dr. Charisma. Laura, I saw a video about a parent who wants their child to blind because they are blind. I don't know what you're saying. If you could rephrase that. Laura Reloaded, going back to the Khan, what would a Klingon Khan be like? Or are they all Khans? I wouldn't say they're all cons. I think that Khan's genetic manipulation and his grandiose ambitions were Klingon-esque, but I would honestly say most Klingons, at least Klingons that are portrayed as warriors and are reserved, are probably better than Khan. Honestly, your Martoks, the Chancellor in Undiscovered Country, I would say that ultimately Khan shows attributes of them, but I would say Klingons have the ability to be better than Khan. And I don't think they can be Khan, at least not portrayed in the Trek universe. They either are Khan or they're weaker than Khan. They're these brutes that just rush in and get themselves killed. In my opinion. Jordan Sullivan, Lore Reloaded. Wesley isn't considered canon by CBS. I wasn't aware of that. I'm being sarcastic. I don't like Wesley Crusher, and I don't like Will Wheaton. I don't like either of them. I can't stand them. Wesley Crusher is canon, though. The Gamer's Edge, helping out, given $5. The Riemann cloaking tech versus the in-universe competition. Are you talking about the Riemann cloaking tech versus just all other cloaks? The problem with the Scimitar is it's a Mary Sue ship. It breaks canon because it's built so perfectly that it's unrealistic that anyone can necessarily build something that perfect, to be honest with you. I think that the Riemann cloaking device is the superior. I would say it's superior only to every device except for the Federation phase cloak. And that's even if you could detect the Federation phase cloak. I would say there's a much better advantage to having a phase cloak that has the possibility of being detected than the perfect cloak. Now, that's my opinion. That's a complete opinion. But I do think that for what it is a decent device. I don't like it because I think that creating a perfect cloak, creating the Scimitar, was a huge mistake. I understand why they did it. I, in fact, talk about it when I talk about the Sovereign ship, because the Sovereign is so powerful, you got to create something like the Scimitar just to take it on. But the Scimitar itself, I don't like it because, first off, I find it unlikely that the Riemanns could build it. Secondly, I think that it's too perfect a ship for the universe. We don't see ships that perfect in universe. Nate Watson, I personally don't hate Wesley. I think we can all sympathize with... Personally don't hate Wesley. I think we can all sympathize with being the only competent one at our job. I found early Troy much more annoying. I've been watching Lore Runner, who is a channel that I love. I love watching him. He does a lot of good background work on the stuff he reviews when it comes to the shows. And from my understanding, from what he said, Will Wheaton really got the shaft a lot. And he was written poorly, sometimes on purpose, if my understanding is correct. Wesley was... My problem with Wesley is he's kind of like a Gary Sue. He is somewhat perfect and is able to do jobs better than people who have went for years upon years and dedicated their whole lives to fields. He also is made too naive, very sheltered for someone who is on a ship around diversity. And he makes a lot of stupid decisions. Do we ever get an in-universe explanation of the difference between disruptors and phasers? No, not... I mean... Yes, in that what they are. They are different weapons. So phasers, I believe, are done by plasma. I forget what disruptors are. But ultimately, the intricate differences, no. They're just a medium for people to kill each other with. Riemann Scimitar is basically a WMD, a weapon of mass destruction, says Admiral Saval. I mean, yeah... I would agree with that. Again, it's inconceivable how that could exist, even in the advanced timeline that it is. But yeah, I would agree it's a weapon of mass destruction. Lore Reloaded, thoughts on what happened with Axanar, and do you think it would have been better than Discovery? This comes up quite a bit, and actually, Axanar has reached out to me. I think it was Alec. It was the Axanar Twitter, I'm assuming that was Alec, who wanted to come on and talk, and I got to find some time. Unfortunately, I'm just so busy. I got Trek Yards coming up. I got to do something with Ketwalski and Council of Geeks. And for months, I promised Ketwalski we'd do something, and I just haven't gotten to it. I'll say the thing that I say all the time is that I loved Prelude to Axanar. And when I saw Prelude to Axanar, it was my understanding that the next thing they were going to do was going to be a sort of faux documentary. Continuing the faux documentary. And I would have really enjoyed that style. Though I found out that they actually intended to do episodes. And those episodes might be really good. I don't know. I don't know that we'll ever see them, if I'm being honest. Now, Axanar claims we will. I honestly don't know. If it's not clear, I can't stand CBS. CBS has stolen thousands of dollars out of my hands, multi-million corporation stealing it from somebody who's just trying to get by, being an entertainer, and is following the law. But I don't blame CBS. I would have probably done the same thing CBS did. I may have tried a cease and desist at first and not went straight to a lawsuit. But if the cease and desist had not been listened to, I think CBS did what they should have. I also think that CBS had... Axanar was so close, so derivative of Star Trek, that CBS didn't have any reason to pay them. CBS could have CBS could have taken Prelude to Axanar, done a scene-by-scene recreation of it, and been in the right. It's not popular, but it is what it is. The Kaylas, popping out $5. Love you, brother. If you could design a ship, what would you focus on? What would be the main feature? The Kaylas, I'm sorry to make you follow up. You don't have to follow up with a super chat. Just do @Lore Reloaded together or @Lore Space Reloaded. And let me know. But what era? Because depending on the era, it would... depending on the era would be what I focused on. For instance, in the original series era, I would probably focus more on bulking out the ship because, and who I'm with, I'm assuming I'm in Starfleet. I would bulk out the ship, specifically with shields and armor, with a focus against torpedoes, because the Klingons would be the main threat. In the Nemesis era, I would probably have more of a focus on, shields would be important as well, but I would probably have more of a focus on both science and advanced weaponry, like your quantum torpedoes, like the advanced armor that we see from Janeway, and a focus on anti-Dominion and anti-Borg technology. In fact, the improvements of the ship would be assuming that the Dominion and the Borg were going to attack again, and that their weapons would be amped up. So I would try to jump past Dominion and Borg technology. @Lore Reloaded, the Klingons we see in DS9 during the attack on the station are shock troopers. They're the least skilled, but the aggression makes up for it. They attack to distract and hold sections. I'd be curious where you why you'd say that. That's consistent with the attack. For those who don't know, I actually did a battle breakdown of the first battle of Deep Space Nine. So I'd be interested where you got that from, but that seems consistent with what we see on screen. And if it's just based on seeing what's on screen, that's cool. But if you got it from somewhere else, I'd be curious too. Phasers are phased nadion particles, and disruptors are use sound for and distort matter. Okay. Is the SJW agenda rooted from Gene's original vision or was co-opted from today's leftist Hollywood's agenda? So, usually I don't read stuff like that, but I think this is interesting. The original Gene, my understanding, and if I'm using the wrong term or the wrong ideology, then go ahead and correct me, but you get what I'm trying to say. It seemed to me that Gene was very I want to say communist, but it may not be that. Definitely socialist. And we see his touches a lot, quite a bit, in the original series. Though, to be fair, he didn't have as much control as he likes people to think he did. He actually didn't have a ton of control in that, which is why the original series did really well. In the Next Generation, the first couple of seasons, he had a ton of control until they pulled him off, and you can really see it there. I do think that, because I think that they didn't co-opt it. I think that Trek has always been left-leaning, and so they're just continuing along. Because I wouldn't necessarily call Discovery anything near Gene's ideals. I would say it's leaning the same way, just a different extreme. But I don't think they co-opted it. I think they just continued it and changed the extreme of it, if that makes any sense. And you guys may disagree, and that's fine if you do. Why did Nemesis-era Enterprise not have transphasic torpedoes? Janeway's home. Bad writing. I guess you could make the argument that the refit didn't include transphasic torpedoes. What do you think would have fixed or improved Voyager? Better writers, better characters? Keeping your writers consistently, having the same writers throughout the show would help. Picking and deciding who and what Janeway is going to be, and sticking to that. Not focusing on Janeway's gender, focusing on Janeway. Doing with Sisko, who was an African-American, a black commander, then becoming a captain, and doing the same thing with Janeway, who was a captain. Also, the Xindi arc towards the end, where you slowly see the Intrepid class ship, the Voyager, or Voyager, calling it the Voyager is weird, seeing Voyager, always in a state of distress or destruction. The first couple of seasons have it so the ship always looks like it's beat to hell. Find a way to introduce a technology that allows them to keep it updated, and then have it where it doesn't look like it's been fresh out of a space dock every episode. Make the Maquis and the Federation dynamics the first 3 or 4 seasons, or just the first season, be very, very hostile. Make the ship almost unable to operate. If I had written it at the beginning, and I think I would have got a lot of pushback on this because everybody wanted girl power, but if I had been at the beginning, I would have had Janeway as the XO, and the captain would have been killed, and then we have Chakotay come on. Chakotay, instead of this racist form of American Indian that they tried to do, Chakotay would have been related to Chakotay in the Admiral Chakotay in Deep Space Nine, and kind of similar to what we see with Paris, and would have been a captain before he joined the Maquis. And so now you have Chakotay and Janeway, both leaders, one of the Maquis, one of the Federation, both vying for control of this ship on who should be captain and who should not. And through the first season, Janeway proves that she should be in command. That would be how I would have done it. And then throughout the episode, you would have had, throughout the seasons, you would have all these issues that every season or every half season, they would have figured out a way to get past it. So the first season, Maquis versus Federation with a ship that's deteriorating. Season 2, the ship is continuing to get beat to hell, so they find a way so that it is constantly in a state of repair, like we always see it. The third season, we figure out how to get fuel so that's no longer an issue, and on and on. Lore Reloaded, what would you say to the idea of Christopher Nolan making a Dark Knight-style Star Trek movie trilogy? I don't like it just based on that, but I'd have to see it. I'd have to see the idea. I'd have to see what they're doing. I'm not against Star Trek. I think some things Discovery does is extremely cool, extremely awesome. So I'd have to see how they put it together. Admiral Nathan Norman, going back to the discussion about the Klingon shock troops on Deep Space Nine during the first battle of Deep Space Nine. It's how I interpreted the attack by watching it, and you don't waste your best troops in the first wave. They're also lightly armored with disruptor pistols and bat'leths like World War I stormtroopers. Well, I can see that. I don't hate that. That's worthy of maybe a breakdown just to consider, because that makes a lot of sense. And based on how they do it, yeah, I mean, even the attack, the sparse attacks you see, it doesn't necessarily look like they're going for critical systems either. You notice that you see the Klingon shock troops during the battle going straight for the promenade. The promenade holds very, very little strategic value overall. But all the civilians are there, and they're all locked up, so it's where Starfleet would instantly go to protect it. So, I don't hate that. Gene was God and Jesus in the Star Trek universe. He was Star Trek's creator. When he left, we got post-season 2 TNG, which saved the franchise. He was a creator and a savior. Gene was a God or Jesus in the Star Trek universe. Okay, he was Star Trek's creator. Of that, the second sentence I don't disagree with. When he left, we got a post-season 2 TNG, which TNG got better after season 2, which saved the franchise. Of that, I agree. He was a creator and a savior. I'm trying to put that together. Are you saying because he died, he saved Star Trek? So the only way for Star Trek to survive was his death? Wouldn't necessarily disagree with that, though it's morbid. Unless you're trying to say something else, let me know, Nate Watson. Thank you so much for the $10. It's how I continue to support, though. What do you think a mirror universe Voyager would be like? I did a faux video that included footage from it. I don't know what a mirror universe Voyager. I think it would be probably Warship Voyager. I think that's a mirror universe Voyager. If you've seen the episode, I forget what it's called, but just look up Warship Voyager. And that's what it would be like, I think. What do you think on Roddenberry's Andromeda? I liked what I saw. I didn't watch it religiously, but every time I watched it, I enjoyed it. I heard the later seasons went to hell. I also saw the Apocrypha by the original writer, and what he thought the ending should be, and I thought that was absolutely excellent. So, I think Andromeda, honestly, if I'm being honest, Andromeda, I think, took some digs at the Federation, at Starfleet. That was at a time when he was getting thrown out of Star Trek. And I think the fact that what was it called in Andromeda? The Coalition, I forget what the name of it. I think the Coalition was supposed to be a pseudo-Federation, and he took some enjoyment from getting it destroyed, from destroying it, I think. I don't have anything that backs that up. It's just the timeline and the way it was destroyed is interesting to me. Jumu, evil Tuvix breaks into the Prime Universe and starts messing with people. I don't hate it. By the way, I love the fact that they started mowing outside every time I try to record or do one of these. That's one of the reasons I do it at night. Tuvix was probably the biggest blunder of Janeway, I think, that ever existed. I think that if Janeway ever had one evil action, because most other actions you could try to talk away, try to justify, but if there was any evil act, it would be Tuvix. And to its credit, that episode did nothing to dissuade you from thinking Janeway was the worst human being that ever existed in the world. No, it's not called the Coalition of Planets. The Andromeda, the organization that took 3 systems. I forget the name of it. It had 3 galaxies. It was 3 galaxies big, and was destroyed by the Nietzscheans, the Nietzschean Rebellion. But that would be cool. Evil Tuvix comes back to stop Janeway. We should get SF Debris to be Evil Janeway. The System Commonwealth. That's right, the Commonwealth. Yeah, I think the Commonwealth and its destruction was a dig at Star Trek. At the Federation. What about future Janeway disrupting the timeline to get Voyager home 23 years sooner? Yeah. I mean, people try to justify her going back in time, but she destroyed lives, made it so people wouldn't exist, wiped away children, changed the Federation forever, all because she wanted to save, at best, a dozen people. Yeah, that's pretty evil. The only reason I think Tuvix was worse, and the only reason I think that Tuvix is worse, and I don't know that it is, but from an emotional standpoint worse, is that she looked Tuvix in the eye and did it. She was so evil, she did it to his face. And maybe it's one thing to wipe away someone and never not look at them while you do it, but then to look them in the eye and do it, and then just walk away. The Klingons are pulling men away from key areas by attacking weak points and holding sections of the station, forcing the defenders to waste men that could be helping damage control. I agree with you, Nathan Norman. I think you've made a very compelling argument for Klingon shock troops that don't necessarily go after key areas, but just try to pull resources. At Lore Reloaded, Janeway affected countless billions of people. Voyager would have affected for better or for worse. Yeah, I mean, I agree. She impacted the Delta and the Alpha Quadrant. Well, Alpha and Beta Quadrant. In theory, since she wouldn't be impacting all those people in the Delta Quadrant, she was a savior of the Delta Quadrant and a villain for the Alpha and Beta Quadrant. Are you going to see Ready Player One? I did not I was not impressed with anything I saw with Ready Player One. And then I watched Jeremy John's review of it. And so I'm kind of coming around to that. Because of Jeremy John's review, I may go and watch it. I had no intention to before that. Jimu. I have a theory on why Janeway gets a mulligan on 90% of her BS. It is because her and Chakotay are critical to the founding of the Time Police. Paradox law protects them. Where do you get that they're... Where do you get that, Juma? I'd be interested. How is she integral in the finding of the Time Police? Is that written somewhere in non-canon resources, like books or something? Because I don't get that. Opinions on the whole Seska thing. What specifically are you referring to when it comes to the Seska thing? Her being a double spy, her raping without raping Chakotay, which is intriguing. What specifically about her? Towards the end, I think it was poorly written, and it was written off, which was unfortunate. But the problem is that Seska hitched her wagon with the Kazon, and the Kazon are just a horrific villain. And so, I mean, you can't really make that done well. It was as if Garrick had joined the Kazon, you would still be with the Kazon. So there's not a lot you can do with that. So I think the Kazon kind of negatively impact her entire arc as a whole. I do like that they have people willing to turn against them. You would have seen more of that on Voyager, I think. Battlestar Galactica, it did it that way too. Battlestar Galactica, I think, does this better. You see people rebelling, people sabotaging, people just not being able to handle what's occurring, and I think that would have happened on Voyager as well. But it didn't, not except for a few exceptions. I tell you, the one character I really like that I wish they expanded on is the serial killer. And I forget his name, but I love his arc, especially when he saves Voyager, where he has worked so hard, he has turned around, he enjoys and loves just murdering people, and he's becoming reformed. The Doctor, Tuvok, they're helping him, And then Voyager's taken over, and now he has to save Voyager. Suitor, thank you. To save Voyager, he has to go back to doing it. It's like it's a drug for him. It's like someone who was addicted to cocaine who now has to take cocaine to help out other people. And his acting in that is just done wonderfully. I hate that we didn't have more of that. Bird of Prey. Bird of Prey, not only giving $5 right now, but a patron, someone who I am infinitely happy with, not happy with, but am grateful to for helping me out, though we don't always agree, which is double awesome that he's willing to support the channel even though we don't agree all the time. Do you think Enterprise would have been better received if it didn't premiere just after 9/11? It was generally... it was originally exploration, but post 9/11 we wanted war. I'd have to see the stats and the rewrites. Maybe, but I think our country, us as a people, the society was moving towards more dystopia even before 9/11. So... you know, for whatever reason, our society, our culture wants dystopia. It wants war. It wants the underdog. Discovery, part of Discovery doing so well, if indeed it is doing well, is because it's reaching out to the dystopian need our society has. And so I think that I don't know. I'd have to see. I don't know. I don't think so. But, as I've said 6 times now, I don't know, or I'm not sure. At Lore Reloaded, I never understand why people always think Klingons are just space Vikings. Their tactics are sound when used against the Federation. After rewatching all of Trek, I have a new respect. Well, Nathan Norman, I'll be honest with you, it depends on the era. The original series, before the movies, did the Klingons no favors. They were mustache-twirling villains that, more than not, were just props to make the Enterprise crew look good. In the original series movies, they really advance them and really make them into this warrior race. And I discussed this when doing the Bird of Prey, which I recently did, which is... that they're a race that highlights honor in whatever form that it may be. And that's engineers, that's warriors, that's captains. And so I think at that point I would agree. We see a lot of that in the Next Generation, though it begins to wane. They begin to come a hat, the warrior hat. Deep Space Nine, they pull them out of it a little bit, and then into Discovery they make them idiots. Enterprise has a few gaffes with them, trying to give them honor when that's not consistent with the original series. And not just honor, but TNG level honor, which is just stupid. In the original series and some of the Next Generation, there are the Next Generation changes. It's obvious that as honorable and warrior cast, they did prize every role for a while. So, yeah, I mean, I like the warrior honor-based role the Klingons have. And I think it's very nuanced. That's one of the things I like about the Klingons, especially in the original series movies, is that it's nuanced. It's not from the outside looking in, and you even see Federation officers who are racist in the movies who don't see it. From the outside looking in, they just look like these brutes that want to kill everything, just Viking pirates. But the honor is more nuanced than that. Defias Bandit, hey there, first time checking the stream out live? What's going on, Defias? I do these so people who can't make the night ones can show up and hang out with me during the day. Would you... At Lore Reloaded, would you like to live in any of the Star Trek eras and why? No. here's the fun thing. Here's the thing, and I think it was Lore Runner again that said this. Star Trek is a cool fantasy that would be fun to live in, but you're asking me, do I want to live in do I want to live in a world where I could be assimilated, could be phased out and then appear in metal, could be killed randomly at the whim of a omniscient-like being, could be turned into salt? Would I want to live in that type of universe? Is the pros of that? Probably not. And if I was to live in that type of universe, it would be Risa, where I lived, because that seems like the safest place. Nate Watson up in the house, helping out, giving $20. Thank you so much, guys. As I consistently say, this is the only way I can continue to do this, is by viewers like you, people who give super chats, sponsors, and patrons. Janeway was evil in Tuvix. Yes, she was, but I'll attempt to defend her. Sweet. Early Voyager constantly said Voyager was understaffed. Merging Neelix and Tuvok worsened it, and Janeway forcing Tuvok to share minds with Neelix would be torturing a friend. Tuvix could do both the jobs of Neelix and Tuvok. We see that throughout the episode. He does both jobs, and he does them both very well. Neelix was not a necessity aboard Voyager. I think this was by this time he didn't know what was coming up. He didn't have any of the previous information. Beyond that, I believe Tuvix also kept his memories. But we didn't need Neelix. You could have things made, food made, without Neelix. In fact, they go out of the way to always make fun of his cooking, that it was always bad. So Neelix wasn't necessary. Tuvok could still do his job. The only ones you're really impacting are the families of Neelix, which would be, I think, was, I forget her name. Whoever, his companion. I forget her name. Was she still there? And then Tuvok's family. But Tuvok's family wouldn't be that big an issue because the needs... Tuvok, they would understand that Tuvok would not want to kill Tuvix. That Tuvok would give his life for Tuvix. So, for me, doesn't pass muster. Also, the Cardassians, I am very impressed with them. Ambush tactics, sensor ghost, ambush tactics. Dukat tried to change the whole standard operating procedure when they had Dominion backing. Well, and interestingly enough, the Cardassians, while they got stomped, did a really good job for what they had in defending against the Klingons. You have to give the Cardassians some due in their war, that they were doing good with what they had. The Cardassians weren't idiots, and they were good at war and subterfuge, one of the reasons they constantly got the upper hand on the Federation and Starfleet. So I do give. I've always had a somewhat of a good respect for the Cardassians in that measure. Trek used to be counterculture, now not so much. I would agree with that. If Trek is now pro-status quo, does that change the spirit of the show in the eyes of the audience? Hashtag free Dankula. Even though I'm not sure why free Dankula has anything to do with it, though I agree. What happened to Count Dankula means I will never go to Scotland or the United Kingdom. Not because I agree with him or I would do anything that he does necessarily, but the fact that they could do that based on a joke. But anyway, I don't think it changes the show. I just think that society has began to more mimic the agenda that Star Trek always tried to do. And so, but now it's gone to a toxic level of that. I don't think that it's liberal, classical liberal. I think that Trek is hitching its wagon with toxic leftism. How old was Guinan in TNG if she was on Earth in the 18th century? She'd be hundreds of years old, if not thousands. As I said, Tuvix was a Kobayashi Maru scenario. Either you give up 2 lives to save 1, or you give up 1 life to save 2. There are arguments on both sides, mostly from Kess, God help us. I disagree. I think there's one clear morally ethical choice, in my opinion. At Lore Reloaded, the Cardassians deserve respect as they are in a resource-starved area and managed to transform themselves from TNG to DS9 into a treat on the Alpha and Beta Quadrant. Well, even in TNG, they did really well. They got the Federation, they got Starfleet to back off. So, yeah, I think even in TNG they did well. At Lore Reloaded, do you think a new Trek series focusing on the humans on the Amelia Earhart planet creating a Delta Alliance would be worthwhile? They might do the Prime Directive right. I'd have to go back and take a look at that, to be honest. I'm not sure, so I couldn't comment. At Lore Reloaded, was Lore in Star Trek Nemesis, or was that a completely different android that looked like Data? Completely different android. Lore did exist, but he wasn't in Nemesis. At Lore Reloaded, threat. Don't know what that means. Jordan Sullivan, your video seems out of sync. Try a refresh. YouTube has been having issues, so I wouldn't be surprised if it is, but try a reset or refresh. But yeah, again, I've said this before. I grew up in a very conservative family, very religious family. So watching Star Trek and seeing two women kiss each other and it be normalized was something very different for me. Seeing transgender, not talking about the Quark episode, but seeing transgender rights discussed was something very interesting to me. Though it was so subtle at the time, the homosexual kiss was out there in your face. But other things at the time didn't have an impact. But when I was older and more understood intricacies, it did make me question. And that's why I like Trek, because DS9, TNG, the original series, they could get it very right and give an opinion and be unabashed about that opinion, but do it in a way that's a conversation that doesn't insult people. Hey, Lore, you may have addressed this before, so I apologize if you have, but the classic splitting Tuvik's argument is that his life was based on the destruction of two others, and his death would return. But it's not that black and white when it comes to Tuvik's. There's quite a few things that we have to take a look at. First off, would Tuvok and Neelix give their life to save Tuvik's if they were different people? I believe the answer to that is yes. Could Voyager continue to operate without Tuvok and Neelix? I believe that the answer is yes. Is it wrong to kill a person to save someone else? Is it wrong to kill one person to save someone else if you have time to look up other options and possibly not even and longer a long span of time? It's not a split second. The answer to that is yes. Janeway is a murderer. She murdered a person. And I don't think that the justifications for bringing back Tuvok or Neelix is worth it. Honestly, SF Debris said this, and I would have loved to seen it. What if she attempted to do that and it failed? How interesting would an arc of that have been? So you got the last 3 minutes. The doctor says, I won't do it because he has a soul. And she says, okay, I'll do it. She does the transporter, and it Tuvix comes back. How interesting would that have been? And then for the next couple of episodes, they have to deal with Tuvix, who knows that Janeway attempted to murder him. Yeah, it was murder, Don Juan. When you kill a person, you murder them. Well, no, that's not true. When you kill a person, not out of defense, but just to do it, that is murder. So it does. Whether she was justified, she is a murderer. Do you play Star Trek Attack Wing, or is that from Eagle Moss? This is Star Trek Attack Wing, which I do play. I enjoy it. I'm trying to find a way. I like the company. I really like the games. I never support a company unless I unless I like them. I don't get paid by any people, so I have to like the company for me to do it. I'm trying to find a way to give them a shout out in a video. I haven't figured it out yet. But yeah, I play Attack Wing, and I like Eagle Moss. Isn't the Orville the new Trek when it comes to discussing matters like morality, identity, and other social issues? Yeah, I mean, Orville, honestly, is just the Next Generation rebooted. And I think that's why a lot of people like it for nostalgia purposes. I mean, I like the Orville. Don't get me wrong. I really enjoy it. In fact, I have a battle breakdown of one of the Orville stuff. Because why not? But the Orville is the Next Generation rebooted. At Lore Reloaded, I am less impressed by Romulan Star Empire. The more I watch, the more I believe they're a paper tiger hiding behind the cloaking technology. They're the weakest race, in my opinion. You know, Laughable Larry, you rock as well. You know, I talk about this, and a lot of people get upset about this, but I tend to agree with you. I think they are so good at propaganda. I think that they're so good at making themselves look like they're a threat that that people, even audience members, believe that they are. You see you, Mr. Pete Channel. Thanks for coming on, brother. You see, anytime they are threatened and there's a chance they can't win, that the deck isn't stacked for them, they back off. That said, the TNG era, I think, was the strongest point for the Romulans, and that mostly because of the D'Deridex class ship. A lot of people disagree with this, but they're welcome to be wrong. Like Don Juan is wrong that it wasn't murder with Janeway. People are wrong about the D'Deridex. Every time we see the D'Deridex, it is a threat to the Galaxy class ship. Arguably could win a fight one-on-one. Definitively can win a fight two-on-one. And that technology during the TNG era made them extremely powerful. That's the only time I really feel like we see them at their most powerful. Because every other time is subterfuge, and in DS9 they're still using D'Deridex, and in Nemesis anything not Scimitar is weak in comparison. In my opinion, is weak in comparison. So I would agree that they're more a paper tiger. Their bark is bigger than their bite, but they do it so well that everybody believes what of a threat they are. And honestly, does it really matter? If your enemy thinks that you're so powerful that your enemy will back off and allow you to do basically what you want, you can still manipulate them, or you are as powerful as people think, you get the same impact to what you want done. For all intents and purposes. I mean, there are some situations like you wanting to go to war, but generally, I think you get the same impact. And I'll say, post-Dominion War, pre-Nemesis, the Romulan Star Empire is probably in the best position out of all of them, because I think with the Breen as the exception, the Breen probably are the best out of everyone. But the Romulans still have their infrastructure. They came in late to the war. They are in a position unlike most other empires. Hashtag Tuvix did nothing wrong. That's hilarious. I would die to save two people, yes. Would that change the fact that I'd be getting murdered? No. No, it would not, says Arctic Leopard. Tuvix begged for his life, and I think that plays an impact too. Tuvix was created, not born. Tuvok and Neelix deserve their lives. Yeah, Data was created, not born. Let's rip him apart so we can figure out how to make more of him. The Doctor, the EMH, he was created. He wasn't born. He doesn't have rights. If he makes something, that belongs to the Federation. He's not an artist. Please. You're right, Don Juan. I stand absolutely corrected. Anything created, not born, has no rights and can be murdered without any kind of consideration. You win. Nate Watson. So the Romulans are the Subaru of races. Their main strength is PR, but on occasion they have a massive success with manufacturable engineering. I mean, if you're going to go that way, I'd call them Apple. By the way, for those who are watching, me and Don Juan like to give each other crap, and we joke back and forth. I love Don Juan. Don Juan's been with the channel for quite a while. Did the Zinkethi get involved in the Dominion War? I don't know. We didn't see anything by that. It wasn't the Zinkethi that signed the agreement with the Dominion, was it? I don't know. I don't remember anything about that. Have you or will you do a breakdown of the Excelsior class and how it stayed in service from Kirk's time to the Dominion? I will. Now, if there is a specific ship you want me to do a breakdown on, go to my community tab and you'll see polls, and you guys actually get to choose what is and isn't. What's the next ship I get to do? I intend to do all of the Star Trek ships. I intend to do a lot of the sci-fi ships. So if the Star Trek ships, you should see every Trek ship ever made on this channel at one point or the other, and if you don't, I've probably died. And I intend to do a lot of sci-fi ships, not just Trek ships. Where was it? Someone asked me. Do I consider Star Trek Online canon? No, I'm willing to accept what they put on their own website, which is their soft canon, which means that it happened unless the TV shows say that it doesn't. They counter what is on it. So, I mean, it's beta canon. They don't even consider themselves alpha canon. They call themselves soft canon. Anything that's not on the screen, generally, there are a few exceptions, but anything that's not on the small screen or the big screen, TV or movies, is not considered alpha canon. That's CBS, that's Paramount. And then when Gene Roddenberry was in charge, the animated series wasn't considered canon, and he even said anything that wasn't live action was not canon. Now that's changed since he died, of course, a little bit before he died, when he fell out of power, really. What do I think about Garak? I love Garak. I think he was an awesome character. I love how interesting he is, and I think he was a better murderer than Janeway. Out of all the Star Trek series, which one do you consider canon or not canon? Anything on screen's canon. It's not me. I am not the arbiter of canon. I don't get to choose what is canon, sadly. CBS and Paramount get to choose what is canon. Just like in Star Wars, because I'm going to start doing that a lot more too, I don't decide what's canon. Disney decides what's canon. So, I mean, all of the series are canon. They are. Venators are my favorite ship too. I love Venators. Absolutely. My favorite Star Trek canon, my favorite Star Trek ship, or not ship, but person, I really like Lorca until the Mirror Universe. Yeah, I really like Lorca. Cisco is pretty cool. Q, later Q, pre-Voyager, but later Q, I enjoyed. I don't know. People always ask me that, and it just depends on what series I'm watching. I do think that I like Tilly. Tilly's a fun character. I think she has a lot of growth. The exception to the animated series was the episode Yesteryear. I believe they stated that episode was intended to be canon. Yeah, the animated series, all of it is canon. Laughable Larry, do you think it was okay for Garak to kill the Romulan captain in the pale moonlight? Are you trying to get me to say one murder is justified so then the second is not? Do I think that Garak to kill the Romulan... Are you talking about the Romulan ambassador? Well, the Romulan in a pale moonlight. He killed him in cold-blooded murder. It was murder. By doing that, he arguably saved hundreds of thousands to millions, if not more. There's a difference between that and Tuvix, because I see what you're trying to do to me, Larry. I'm on to you and Don Juan. I see what's going on. I don't think it was ethical to kill the the captain. Was it okay? Maybe. If it's the only way to bring the Romulans into the war and the Dominion wins if they don't, then I guess. I don't know. See, if you're going to catch me on this, what you need to do is clip out the piece where I'm saying Tuvix, it's not okay, it was murder. Wait about 3 live streams and then ask me then, because I won't be thinking about it. Ultimately, yeah, it was okay. I don't think it was ethical. Was it right? No. Was it okay? Yeah. But I think it's different. The situation is far, far different, in my opinion. Do you think a complete series about the mirror universe would be interesting? I do, but I think in order to do that well, you would need to bring another ship. Bring a person or a ship into the fold. And it would be from the Prime Universe. And it would be very interesting. Just watched Star Trek 4. They had a Miranda-class starship called the USS Saratoga. I was wondering if it could have been the same Saratoga that fought in Wolf 359. So the Saratoga is basically like the Oberths. They find ships and they name them Saratoga, and they have like 6 Saratoga ships just flying around, and they make sure they're in a position to where they get screwed over. Because if you're the Saratoga, you're going to get screwed over. So just like Oberths. Is it murder to self-destruct a ship knowing the computer system can basically think on its own? We can go all day with this. Is it murder? We don't know the computer. The computer can't necessarily think on its own. It's not considered a sentient being. So, I mean, destroying that would be like destroying this computer, which in theory could think on its own. The Romulan senator, when your back is against the wall defending your home world, can do whatever you have to do, i.e. Section 31. To be fair, the Romulan senator wouldn't have given his life, I think, to save the Federation. I would put the Cavort Bird of Prey ahead of the Deredex for tactical utility and combat effectiveness, followed by the Defiant and then the Galore, I call it Galore every time, as the big 3 of the Dominion War era. I don't know that I agree that a Cavort could take it to Deredex. I'd have to look at the breakdowns on the from a technical side. What characters from other franchises would you like to see in the Trek series? Admiral Adama, John Sheridan. I wouldn't want to see Admiral Adama or John Sheridan. They just wouldn't fit. I do like Sheridan and Adama. I don't know. I'd be interested to see an Ahsoka-esque character in Star Trek. Is killing murder? Not always. Is killing a bug murder? Murder is defined as one person killing another. So no. All these questions on murder. Gaylord class cruiser. Psh. Sometimes ethics make nothing more than a funeral pyre. Life's prime directive is survival. Feeling good about not dying comes in a distant second. Am I the only one that doesn't like Tuvix and think that Janeway made the right choice? I much prefer Tuvok and Neelix than that hybrid abomination. It's not about whether I like Tuvix or not. At all. It has nothing to do with me liking Tuvix. Should Janeway have killed Person C to bring back Person B and Person A? That's the question. What is your opinion on Enterprise C concept art ship Eagle Moss released versus the C that we got in the yesterday Enterprise? I don't know. I'd have to see it. I can look it up real quick. What'd you say? Eagle Moss. Sorry for the tapping. Eagle Moss Enterprise C concept. I mean, is that drastically... yeah, it is drastically different. Not drastically different. It is different. I like the original better, in my opinion. But this is only looking at one image, so... Tuvok should have failed and she lose all 3. Now, there's an interesting idea. What if she went to bring back Tuvok and Neelix and all of them died? And then for the next episodes, she has to deal with that. And ultimately, we'll bring back Tuvok and Neelix. But how interesting... There was so much they could have did with that arc. I hate that they made it a one-off. Person A and B should be given life before C when considering C was created with the death of A and B without their permission. Screw the fact that they might be willing to give their lives to do that. Screw the fact that person C is begging for their life. He was created, right, Don Juan? I mean, if they're created, it doesn't matter. Whatever, you know. I mean, basically, Don Juan, were you like clapping and yelling yes when we saw the Type 1 EMHs doing menial work and doing mining work and all that? Robert Panic. I think you were right. Star Trek is conservative. It doesn't care about O-birth rights. Did Bashir really destroy Section 31 at the end of Deep Space Nine? He did not. I prefer to think that there were more cells than he was aware of. Yeah, he only killed one person. In fact, they talk about going after Section 31 after that. So, I mean, I don't even think he crippled them. I think that they were set up in cells, and so the loss of Sloan wasn't a huge hit. One audience member, one fan, in fact, said that, what did he say? He said he thought that the way they put Section 31 together was that Section 31 had subject matter experts. So maybe Sloan was big on watching Starfleet security, internal Starfleet security, and Romulans. And then you'd have someone who watched the Klingons, and then you'd have someone who watched the Breen. So I think that makes more sense. I think they just have to find someone else to take over what he had. Kayla's have to take care of my dog now and stuff to eat. Nice to catch you live. Nice to see you too, Kayla's. Who do you think would win in an all-out war between the Federation and the Terran Empire? The Terran Empire would probably win, assuming equal technology. In that case, I definitely think that Tuvok and Neelix were murdered by accident, and so you have a choice of killing one being that shouldn't exist or leaving two people that we know and love gone. Yeah, and see, that's another good point on Tuvix. Tuvix didn't have any say in what happened. He didn't do that to Tuvok and Neelix on purpose. So, you're killing someone, you're murdering them, for something they didn't do. And is that right? And I give Don Juan a hard time. I'm not saying there isn't some arguments for it, and that you can't have some legitimate arguments, but I think it's fairly nuanced. Don Juan, holograms can't feel pain. That's what those EMH programs were created to do. They weren't created. They were originally created to help people, but they were created for a role. Would they know a different life if programmers didn't program it? I think they were given sentience. I think at the time it's proven that they have sentience, they change. Nathan Norman, I meant that the BOP is a more useful ship for multiple roles than the Tadera deck seems to solely be made as a counter. Oh, well, with that I would agree. People, yes, it was murder. Never mind the circumstances. One person wanted to live. Janeway decided no, he wasn't going to live. Taking away someone's life against their will is defined as murder. Generally, in this circumstance, it was. I think that, war or self-defense or defending someone else, I don't think that's murder. But Janeway clearly committed murder. Now, was she justified in committing murder? That's the question we're having. Do you think that Tuvok and Neelix would approve of her actions after they realized what happened? I think that see, there's so much you could do with this concept. Why are the Riker? Why are the Riker? Just saw someone say Riker. Why are the writers so idiotic and not following up? I think Tuvok would have found it illogical and emotional and would have disagreed with the decision. I think Neelix would have had a ton of remorse to know that someone was murdered for him to live. And I don't know how he would have felt about Janeway after that. Shrone Moore, at Ruler Reloaded, Riker and Pulaski did something similar when they murdered their clones. The clones were not responsible for their own creation. I agree. Completely agree. I'm trying to think. If for someone else to live, I had to die, but that person... So let's say something was going to happen and I couldn't stop it. This person was going to be created, and their creation meant my death. But if they died, or if they were killed, then I could survive again. But they had nothing to do with what happened to me. And everything else was taken care of. My family was taken care of. You guys still got your Lore Reloaded videos, which I'm sure is what you all care about. Would I want them to die so that I could live? Especially since they had no role in it. And in fact, they would have to sit there while they were being killed and feel it happen to them. If everything else is taken care of, I don't know that I would want to live. I mean, I don't know. That's a hard question. Yeah, the Nathan Norman. She could have had all three, given that they only needed DNA, and the stored pattern in the system CTNG Season 2, they say Pulaski, using transporters in that way. Transporters are incredibly inconsistent. Yeah. Starfleet Protocol 37.5 to 17. All swagger jackers are subject to death immediately. Okay. All jackers of swagger, I guess. Man, you can't say that and it not sound dirty. What about when Sisko fired on the Maquis planet in Deep Space Nine? Would that be classed as attempted murder or not? That would be classed as terrorism in my opinion, and he should be spending most of his life, the rest of his life, in fact, in a penitentiary. He committed an act of terror and an act of possible mass genocide. The fact no one got killed is a minor miracle. They all had the ability to get away, but if something went wrong, people would die. That was terrorism, and he has no right being a captain after that. I also love how the Tuvix incident also combined their clothing into something fashionable. I never noticed that, but that's good. I think it has to do with emotional attachment. We are not attached to Tuvix other than the fact that he's alive, but we are attached to the other two, and so leaving them to die, it feels wrong to me. I mean, I don't know who said it, but Kobayashi Maru was right. This was a why can't I say it, man? I've said it in videos before. This was a Kobayashi Maru. So, I'm not saying it's not a hard decision for Janeway. I'm not even saying that it was definitively the most evil act Janeway has ever done. I'm not saying that it was an easy decision, and I'm not saying that she couldn't have justified it in her mind. Janeway could have asked Q to bring Tuvix too. That's a good point too. Oh yeah, what's going on with that? 44 thumbs up, 1 thumbs down. It at least needs to equal 89. We've been up to 95. Come on, show me some love and give me some likes. Give me that like candy. Give me all the like love. I want all the likes. Though we will be ending. I'm sorry, Laughable Larry. Janeway could have. I addressed that, but yeah, she could have asked Q a couple of times. See, watch this. I'm gonna type 1. I like my show too. If you look into her eyes in that episode, I mean, what do you see? If I look into her eyes while she's doing it, I see the blank stare of a serial murderer, is what I see. If you're talking about after that, I do see a person who can't stand herself at the end. And now 2 dislikes. I don't care. I've said this before. I wouldn't care if I had 0 thumbs up and 91 dislikes. I don't care. Downvote me. You ain't got it. Okay, hold your horses. I raised the thumbs up to 60. Sephiroth in the house. Where was it? When Janeway stranded those ships in the subspace pocket. Yeah, Janeway, here's the thing. Janeway does a lot of stuff that feels cool and looks cool. But when you analyze it, it makes her look like a horrific person. And the only justifiable way for her to still be a good person, but to do these horrific acts, is to look at her as a tragic hero. Someone who wasn't prepared for what was put in front of her, and as time went through, she slowly fell into a type of madness where her crew was all she cared about, and damn everything else. That's an interesting story, and it's not the story they meant to tell. But that's the only way any of this makes logical sense to me. And that's not to say she couldn't have been the great hero that they wanted her to be. There are episodes and times when Janeway, I think, is on par with Sisko, or better. But unfortunately, the inconsistent writing, the need to make her great because she was female, gets in the way of that. Howard Gleason, can you terrorize terrorists? Yes, you can. You can. Laughable Larry, I wish we got to hear what Neelix and Tuvok thought. Yeah, that would have been interesting. Icha Kayurasaki asks, does Janeway have any qualities you do like? Is there a specific season you like with her? There's not a season where I think she does it extremely well. I do like some... There are some times she is a great captain, in my opinion. And I liked the duality of her in the episode. I forget the episode, but Voyager hits a subspace anomaly of some sort, and it begins phasing in and out. And what occurs is you have a Voyager that's okay, and a Voyager that is destroyed almost all to hell. And the Vidians at the end ultimately find Voyager. And they turn it around because they attack the Voyager that isn't beat to hell and begin, killing everybody. Janeway in that, I think, had a good duality, both as the captain of a almost destroyed ship and a captain of a ship that's still working there. And I loved how she outsmarted the Vidians in that. I think that was one of the best scenes with her, because the Vidians are taking over the good Voyager. They basically own the ship, and they come on the bridge, and Janeway, she gets up. I really like it. She stands up and she nods and she's like, "Welcome to the bridge," and then the Voyager just blows itself to hell. I thought that was really a pretty cool scene with her, and I like the duality in that. There are also other episodes. I'll start rewatching Voyager so I can give you guys examples, because there are examples where she is written, in my opinion, very well. The worst character in Voyager eventually turns out to be Kes. I don't like them bringing her back. I think they didn't do her any favors. Was it right for the Vidians to kill a few people to save many of their own race? I don't think it's right. I don't think it's moral. Would I do it to save my kids? Probably. But no, I don't think it's right. What did you think of the portrayal of crew morale in the Year of Hell? Year of Hell. Year of Hell is Janeway to a degree done right, in my opinion, and it should have been a season. I wish they had fired Berman earlier. It should have been a season. You saw the fatal flaws of Janeway in Year of Hell, but you also saw her make decisions you can understand, and ultimately become a really good captain in that. And I think a season of that might have been a great redemption for her. I think Year of Hell is a good example of writing her with those flaws done right. Because some of the things that frustrate me with Janeway's flaws is that they're not written as flaws. It's just the writing is so bad that they are flaws. Is it fair to say Janeway isn't a good captain when she's in a situation none others have been in? Picard morals might have went out the window too. I don't think that she's in a situation that others haven't been in. Picard had been thrown all over the galaxy. Cisco had to deal with issues similar to what Janeway had to. Lorca was in a war that made no sense. Kirk, besides having to sleep with other women, also had issues of his own. So I don't know that he was in a different situation. Do I think that if you took Janeway out and put Cisco in, would they have had similar issues that Janeway had? Possibly made similar mistakes? Yeah, sure. But I think they were more seasoned and more ready for that than Janeway is. Janeway, as written, is simply naive and was a new captain and wasn't ready for it. That doesn't mean she couldn't have been a great captain. It doesn't mean she wasn't a great captain ultimately. It just means that she wasn't ready for it. At Lore Reloaded, Starfleet Command is too far disconnected from its fleet commanders and allows too much leeway with commanders. They need to rein in not enough commanders that needed it, i.e. Maxwell. I think that in Deep Space Nine, you're kind of right. They're having issues all over the board, so that's why we don't see Cisco behind the jail cell he so rightfully deserves. TNG era, I think they wanted to have captains that were very, very anti-war, and that's why they had the issues. At Lore Reloaded, what do you think of the Equinox? We're going to be finishing up soon, guys. The Equinox, the episodes with that really pissed me off about Janeway. It shows how hypocritical she is, how she thinks she's better than everyone. It shows a form of madness. It shows her madness, in my opinion. Because she treats the Equinox... First off, she had a chance to stop the battle with the Equinox. She had a chance to ensure that no one got hurt or killed. And didn't take it with the Equinox. Secondly, she blamed them for doing a lot of the things she herself would have done. I don't think Janeway would have... killed the aliens or anything, but beyond that, a lot of the choices she would have made the same thing. So you have Voyager, and also I love how that episode talks about how the Intrepid class was a combat vessel, that it was designed for war. I love that. But beyond that, so you have Voyager going up against the Equinox, and the Equinox is outmatched clearly. The captain comes up and the captain says, okay, you know what? I take absolute full responsibility. If you will give leniency to my crew, we'll surrender. So Janeway, being a great Starfleet captain, being the pinnacle like everyone on this live stream thinks, said, you know what? I will. I'll give them leniency. We can't ignore it. There will be some punishment, but it'll be very light compared to you. That's what she does, because that's what any Starfleet captain who isn't insane would do. That's what Cisco would do. That's what Picard would do. That's what Kirk, except she didn't. She said they made their bed and made it so the captain had to kill himself. And then after the captain killed himself, after they got the crew back, she did what he requested. You know what? You can start becoming a part of our crew, but we don't trust you. So we're not going to let you have access. You're going to have to earn your right to be a part of the crew. So all she wanted to do was, as someone said, murder the Equinox. And then after she got her Equinox boner done, after the USS Equinox was destroyed, then she did what the captain wanted her to do. Imagine yourself in a Star Trek show, and you're the captain. What would your captain be named, and what race would you be? I'd like to be a Trill, probably. Or Betazoid. Betazed. And I don't know, my captain, Marks. Mr. Captain Marks, that would be his name. Don't forget, she threw her first officer in the brig for not agreeing to murder Federation citizens. That's true, too. Oh, man, the Equinox shows how she was willing to let this Starfleet officer, this Federation citizen, die. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Oh, Robert Panek, I love you. She did take that crazy. She did take that crazy personally, like Sisko did with his trade. And that's true. I think Sisko went overboard with Maquis traders. I think he went overboard with Eddington. I think he went overboard with whoever the other guy was. I forget his name. So yeah, I mean, I think Sisko was unreasonable. Was that defense fleet at the end for the Borg or Janeway? It was for the Borg. Why was Voyager always traveling at warp 6 if it could cruise at warp 9 or something? I don't think it can cruise at warp 9. I don't think that's its cruise warp. Warp 6 sounds low for the Intrepid, though. Anytime you get into warp 9, generally that's not a cruise warp because warp 9 begins to deteriorate the ship. I've never known one not to be deteriorated at warp 9 when it comes to Starfleet technology. So, yeah. Don Juan, I've said it a million times, the Maquis weren't traitors, they were freedom fighters. Starfleet trying to force loyalty never works. Yeah, so... And I know sometimes you get irritated with me at what I call them, Don Juan, but whether they were doing it right or wrong, they were terrorists. And that's kind of why I keep to terrorists. It has a negative connotation for obvious reasons, but they did commit acts of terrorism. Now, were they traitors to Starfleet? If they were, which I think you can make an argument, I think that them being traitors of Starfleet was justified. Because I would agree with you. Starfleet did nothing. Starfleet was willing to turn their back while people died. So being a traitor to Starfleet, that's not a bad thing. But they also were terrorists. They were fighting for their freedom, so you can call them a freedom fighter, sure. But freedom fighters still can and are terrorists in some situations. The Fed commanders also failed to follow the art of war. Sun Tzu said, when you defend everything, you defend nothing, and they suffered for it almost to the bone. I agree with that. Sisko did go overboard, but it made his character more believable. Old Fire Master, I gotta head out. Well, good seeing you, brother. Thanks for coming. Nellie Jones. Sisko did go overboard, but it made his character more believable. See, I don't. Him going full out and committing terrorism to get at the Maquis makes him feel unbelievable. I think it broke his character. Benster, I disagree with you on the Maquis. Starfleet offered to move them to brand new planets. Keep in mind, none of the Maquis originated from those planets. They were settlers. Hey, Benster, I know that you just moved to Israel. And I know that you're now a new citizen of Israel. But we decided that we are going to be more friends with Palestine. So we're going to move you somewhere comparable to Israel and give all of your stuff to Palestine. And then, when you refuse to move, we're going to make an unreasonable and uncomfortable agreement with Palestine where Palestine is going to come in and sometimes kill some of your settlers, bomb your city, and both us and Palestine have agreed that they're not going to do this, and then when you point out, hey, they're doing this to us, we're going to turn a blind eye to it because we don't want war. And we're going to let them continue to kill you and pretend like Starfleet is awesome and we defend the weak, but not you. And you're going to be okay with that. And if you fight back, we're going to call you a terrorist, and we're going to only recognize you as a citizen when you're in our courts. Outside of that, if you're murdered by Russia, we're not going to try to defend you. You're only a citizen worthy of citizens' rights, and not even that, when you're in our jail cell. Sisko went mad. His command crew should have arrested him instantly, informed command that he had psychotic break that they had been arrested for as well. Yeah, everyone on that, all of the bridge crew absolutely should have been arrested and put in jail cells. Every one of them. Year of Hell was kind of dumb. Why didn't she just go around Krenim space? I think Krenim space was so large that it was difficult for her to. Horrible analogy. Israel constantly steals Palestine land. They should stop Israel at all costs. Wouldn't we if Canada tried? Then choose any place you want, Don Juan. Don't go all silly on me in that argument. I don't care. You just moved to Florida, and we gave it to Cuba, and now Cuba is killing you. You just moved to Quebec, and Quebec was given to America, and now America is killing you. Whatever, dude. Just trade out the names of the cities. The funny thing is, when reality reset the Year of Hell, Janeway did go around Krenim space. Well, that's true, Benster. I'll give you that. Canada couldn't fight its way out of a paper bag. No, I'm not going to tell that. It's interesting to look at war scenarios for Canada against the United States, or the United States against Canada. They unrealistic expectations of the other side. Howard Gleason would still leave. Plus new land. Well, there you go. I'm Canadian, a former Quebecer. I'm all for giving it to America. Okay, well then maybe in the real world it just doesn't work. But I mean, Don Juan, or whoever, everybody, you guys get my point. Maybe Israel and Palestine was it was just the first thing off the top of my head. Just whatever. Just choose a place. I was trying to... I was just trying to give a real world example, because that's the way it looked like to me of what happened. What time is it? We have been here for an hour 30, good gents. An hour 30. All right, so I think we're going to end it there. I'll give you guys a couple more comments, and I think we'll be done. Canada's war plan versus the USA, Operation Southern Strike. Yeah, interestingly enough, when you look at the war plans before World War II, which solidified the United States as an ally of Britain and thus Canada. The United States, Canada's plan was to slow the United States down so that the UK would come and save them. The US's plan was to strike Canada as hard as it could, cut off all ports so the UK couldn't come and help them. And the UK's plan was to let the US have Canada. All the UK was going to do was set up a blockade so that the US couldn't hit Europe. Everybody thought that the UK was going to come to the help of Canada. They were going to let Canada go. That was fun. Below average, and here I just got the notification. Thanks, YouTube. Hey, if you have Twitter, let them know about that. I think that's funny. Another great stream, Laura, says Laughable Larry. Who's the only country to... Was destroying Romulus a bad move for the Star Trek franchise? Yeah, I think destroying Romulus was a bad move, in my opinion. All right, guys, I think we're going to end it there. I want to thank you so much. Thanks for watching this. It's always fun. I had a great time. Sometimes I'll start the live stream just for one reason or another, not feeling it. I mean, still wanting to do it, but just kind of not into it. This wasn't that time, but I've always left a live stream loving it and glad I did it. And it's because of you guys. Guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.